Hi, this is Chris, the guitar amp tech from Sydney, Australia. In this video, I'm not going to repair a customer's amplifier. Why? Well, I'll get into that shortly. But if you, like me, are anal enough to question whether Gibson used the correct taper of pot and how we can improve the functionality of a guitar, then go grab yourself a coffee, pull up a chair, and let's learn some fun stuff. Ooh, Daphne Blue. Thank you. We haven't had this one for a while. Beautiful. So why aren't I doing an amp today? Well, some selfish of a woman was sitting next to me on a 7-hour flight, coughing and spluttering. I was soon diagnosed with COVID-19. I should have said, would you mind asking for a towel that I can shove off? But I paid the price for being a gentleman. I confess to being partly to blame. I left my face masks in the checked bags, and now I'm paying the price. Aside from feeling terrible, tomorrow I am missing a very important event that I booked 6 months ago. If you saw my video of the Tweed Tone 12, you may have noticed that one of my all-time favourite guitarists is Kevin Borich. And you probably know that Sydney Harbour is the most beautiful harbour on the planet. Well, tomorrow night, Kevin Borich has a harbour cruise on Sydney Harbour, which I'm going to miss because of this who gave me COVID. You may have noticed that I'm not wearing my usual guitar amp top. Well, I don't have the strength to lift an amp on my bench, and I need to make myself feel better. So I've decided to do something for myself today. He's the newest member of my family. As you can see, his name is Eric. Those of you who know me will know which Eric I have obsessed over my entire life, and which guitar is so named here. Let's have a look. To me, Eric's best tone ever was on the Beano album, where he used his 1960 Les Paul Burst. Mine is a Gibson Custom Shop R8 that has been moderately relicked. I'm pretty sure it was not by Tom Murphy, because Tom had a very clever way of signing his work down near the bridge tone pot. So why is Eric on my bench today? Although I really like the sound of the mass-produced Burstbuckers pickups in store, at home they didn't have the air or three-dimensionality of the Sliders pickups or the Fraylins in Larry. That's my, I think, 2003 Custom Shop CS336. Now, I had a set of Seymour Duncan Antiquities on my shelf for over 10 years, so they went into here. Definitely got that air back. But there's two things that we're going to work on today. This will be of interest to you, but if you are not as anal as me, you may not think it's worth your effort to do what I'm doing. I use the tone control a lot on my bridge pickup, like Eric did. I use it to knock off the tops and leave behind the punchy mids. To me, a great Les Paul sound is a nasally sound. Joe Bonamassa can get it, Dickie Betts could get it, sometimes Dwayne got it. But I'm hearing a linear taper and not a log taper. I get nothing between 10 and 3 on the tone pot, and in between 3 and 0, bang, it's all gone. All the tops are gone. So we're going to measure the pot to be sure I'm not hearing things. COVID has affected my balance, my coughing, my strength, and my sleep. See, if it's affected my hearing, it's affected my hearing. If it's affected my hearing, then I'm really stuffed. Our ears hear logarithmically, so anything to do with what we hear, like volume or tone, should be a logarithmic pot. Otherwise, it's going to sound like the tone controller is doing nothing and all the effect then bunches up at one end or the other. when do we need a linear pot, you ask? Well, we'd use a linear pot when we are controlling something like tremolo speed, and a log pot for when we are hearing something. Okay, let's have a closer look at that. Okay, see if this little drawing will help explain what I mean here. So if the sound that's coming in to the sound we're generating goes through, is logarithmic, and it goes through a pot which is linear, it's almost like this times this equals this. So linear means everything that comes in is going to come out exactly the same way. So it's going to come out with that same pattern, which means when we're hearing it, it's going to sound like lots of space, lots of space, lots of space, lots of space, then bunching up, bunching up, bunching up. Some manufacturers, I'm sure, do it intentionally, where they'll use this sort of pot for their volume knob, so you get all of this great volume increase between 1 and 3. Fact is, you've probably reached full volume by 3. The rest of it from 3 and above is almost no change. Now, if the sound coming in is logarithmic, and we use a opposite but logarithmic taper, then we're basically multiplying these again, and this time we're hoping that we will cancel it out and basically get a linear interpretation in our hearing. So when we're talking about sound, it's important that we use a logarithmic type of taper. And when we're controlling something, like speed of tremolo, we're going to use a linear pot, because we're not hearing the pot, we're just hearing what the pot is doing to control some other part of the circuit. So I've put this dial on the pot, it's just easier to read then. And I've got basically the point is going to be the center tab of the pot. And already you can see the first issue. It's supposed to be a 500k pot. It's reading 407k. 2 is 406.6. 3 is 351.3. 4 is 296.6. 5 is 243.3. 6 is 181.4. 7 is 128.8. 8 is 57.3, 9 is 58.0, and 10 is 0, 0.3, which is 0, because I didn't calibrate the leads out. So, what are we thinking? Just looking at that, I'm thinking this is linear. If we look at position 5 and say that's halfway between 0 and 500, that's 243. That's pretty close to half. Now let me set up the new pot. All right, this is the new pot set up, and I decided to opt for a slightly more expensive CTS precision pot, I think they call this. Let's see. So it's saying 474. So already it's an improvement, considerable improvement over the original pot, which was 407, 473.8. 3 is 465.2. 4 is 453.5. Look at this difference already. 5 is 441.3. 6, 427.3. 7, 400.5. 8, 239. 9 is 72. And 10 is 0. Wow. Well, you can already see this is definitely logarithmic. I'm going to now plot these on an express. I'm going to plot these on an express. Oh, Jesus. Come on, COVID brain. I'm going to plot these on a Excel spreadsheet. Well, this couldn't have worked out better than I possibly could have hoped for. So the blue is the original pot, and the brown is the CTS precision pot. Along here we have kilo ohms, and along here we have the knob position, like 1 to 10. As we thought, or as I thought, the original pot was just linear. I know on both my Les Paul Custom Dug, I have to, well, my preferred tone knob roll-off is about 7. My previous R8 was also about 7. To get the tone roll-off that I wanted to on this one, I had to go at about 3.5. So let's just, so it looks like that's measuring at the centre. So I reckon it was around about here. And what's that? Looks like around about 320 or something. Kilo ohms. Right, so on the original pot, to get that same roll-off, and then look at how close I was. We're talking about everything bunching up between the amount that I wanted rolled off and full muffle was 2.5 positions on the tone knob. Pretty much very limited sound range. But now it's going to be at around, oh, look at that, it's going to be at 7.5. Exactly where my previous R8 and where Doug sits to get my ideal Clapton tone. Job well done, CTS. Now we say job well done, and this is their interpretation of a linear pot. As you can see, it is probably more closely defined as 2 linears with a break at around about just short of where I need to be, actually. But look at all that usable range I've now got. I've got the range from 7.5 through to 0, whereas before I had 3.5 to 0. This is going to be really happy. Yeah, so sorry, they link 2 linears together to simulate a log taper. Excellent. I'm very happy with that and prove that I am not going deaf. All right, now let's look at the other tone pot, the neck tone pot, and what we're going to do with that. But first, let's have a quick discussion about what modern and vintage or 50s era wiring is from the Gibson perspective. So here's a pickup. It's a coil, and this is the part that actually generates the sound. And this is an effective, it's not a physical resistor, but it's the resistance as a result of this winding. So we're going to call that RP for pickup. Then that comes into the control cavity, and the wire from the pickup is going to go to tab 1 of the volume knob. Then the wiper will then go to the switch or the output jack, depending on what sort of guitar you got. Most Gibsons will go to a switch, the pickup selector switch. Also going from the pickup will be a wire directly to the tone pot on tab 1. Tab 3 is not connected. And the wiper will go to the capacitor, that's our tone cap, to ground. Sometimes you see it the other way around with the cap going there and the capacitor actually spanning the difference. But yeah, this is the way I normally do it. And then vintage wiring is slightly different. Pickup goes straight to the volume knob, the volume pot as before, but now the wiper is going to go to the tone pot instead of the pickup directly going to the tone pot. And the same wiring otherwise, and then it'll go off to our pickup selector. Some people say that it retains the highs better than modern wiring. There's some element of truth to this. But the reason I end up not going to vintage wiring on any of my guitars, and I have tried it and I just keep coming back to the modern wiring,
is that, as you can see, the tone and the volume now become interactive, whereas here the tone is set before the volume. Here, every time you change the volume, it will affect that resistance, that RC, the resistance capacitance to ground. So our frequency of the breakpoint will change every time we change our volume control. And that's the bit that I just can't come to terms with. So I always revert back to the modern wiring, matter of taste. With all of my single tone pot guitars, like my PRS Santana, like my Telecasters, I don't ever use the tone pot on the neck pickup. I just don't use it. No, that's a lie. I'm lying. I did use a tone control on a neck pickup. I remember it well. It was when I was doing my final exams for my jazz course, and that was 1993. Oh, there you go. Exactly 30 years ago, I used the tone pot on the neck pickup. But for me, every 30 years is not often enough to justify it. In electronics, there's a common way, and I can't remember the name of it, of understanding how a circuit works, and just take it to extremes. Let's pretend this is DC. Well, we know it's never going to be DC because a pickup will never generate DC, but let's just pretend for the sake of the argument. If this is DC coming out of here, our volume control will be operating as a perfectly good potential divider. When we come down here, comes into this variable resistor. It's not hooked up as a potential divider, it's a variable resistor now. But then it comes to a capacitor. And we know at DC, a capacitor blocks it. So this is open circuit, so we lose no current down our tone path if it's DC. Now go to the opposite extreme, and let's call this high frequency. When it's very high frequency, we're now going to assume that this is a short circuit. So we're now going to assume that that connects straight to ground. So if our tone control is right down here, well, we're effectively halving what's going out, because we've got 500k to ground here, 500k to ground here. It's only half coming out. And if it goes this way, or if you turn the pot up to this way, then it's a direct short circuit to ground. And if we're not at that extreme, then we know we're going to be losing something. We're either always going to be getting a trickle of our sound coming through this pathway and losing it to ground, and we're going to be losing a little bit of volume for the same reason. There's going to be a second pathway there. So how do we stop this? Well, on all my single tone pot guitars, I just remove that tone control and have it only operating on the bridge pickup. As we have two tone controls on a Gibson, I'm now going to, and knowing that when I have it on 10, which is where it lives 99.9% of the time on the neck pickup, I'm going to actually cut part of that track so that when I've wound it to 10, there is no connection to all this circuit. So this will give us an effective increase in clarity because we're losing less highs down this pathway. Even though the pathway is very small, you can hear it. I can hear it, so you can hear it. So I'm going to show you how to convert a normal tone pot into what's called a no-tone tone pot. Oh. My last COVID test. I kept looking at that, effing bitch. So we're going to open up this pot next, and here's what we should expect to see. Now, you're probably wondering why I've got my glove on, and that's because I'm accident prone, as everyone tells me, and I'm likely to go, and so I'm hoping this might just lessen the lacerations. So under there we expect to find a circular track of a conductive material like carbon.
So that's one connection, that's two connection. The third connection should be to this wiper, which will move around that track back and forward as we turn that pot. And what we're going to do is we're going to find that last bit. So we're going to make sure that we're at the 500k end, which is fully clockwise, so we don't get confused and cut the track at the wrong end. So we're going to see where that contact is at when we're fully clockwise, and from that end we're going to just cut out a bit of carbon using a knife like such. Now, some people just apply a bit of lacquer to the end of the track, others just cut the track. So I like to try and find a more difficult way to do it, and I will cut the track and I will apply a bit of lacquer as well. And I do that mainly so the wiper doesn't hit the edge of that just cut track and then in time start to lift the track. And that'll be the end of the pot. So let's see if I can do this without jamming the screwdriver into my fingers. Tab 1, successful. Tab 2, successful. No blood in sight. Oops. Ha-ha! See? Did you see what I did there? I slipped and screwdriver went bang. Didn't feel a thing. So these tabs, you'll get to do this once, maybe twice, and then the tabs will snap. So you're not going to get too many goes at this. All right, I'm hoping that'll lift off now. Viola. See, the pot, nicely lubricated. Now we're going to see if we can see where the track is. Fully clockwise, oops. Now by watching where that track ends, it ends on that side. So if I lift that away now, whoop, you go there, oopsie, you go there, and I now know that the end of the track that I'm going to have to need to cut is going to be right there. Well, I'm not too concerned about how far I cut off, because we're really going to be talking, rotating at less than 1 notch, from 10 to 9. And so we're looking at a tenth. If I can cut off roughly a tenth of this, so that's half of it. That's 2.5 of it. It's 1.25 of it. So I reckon if I cut off sorry, because I'm a blind bat, I need to have this quite close to my face. Any carbon track behind, the whole plan has been wasted. I think that's got it. To be sure, I'm going to measure between these two outer rings. The middle one's not connected to anything because it'll end up being connected to the wiper. So if I'm measuring anything between these two tabs, between there and there, means I haven't cut that track sufficiently well. And it looks like I have done it well enough, I should say. Open circuit. Great. Okay, it's done. Now, to apply a bit of lacquer to that, just to seal that edge up. and that's purely to protect the track, because in time that wiper will eventually have chipped off the edge of that track. Remembering the last time I used a neck tone pot was in 1993, so the odds of me chipping that edge off, really small, really small. But more for you, because you may, for some unknown reason, want to turn down the tone control on your neck pickup. God knows why. Now, while that's drying, I'm going to show you something. Let's reassemble the pot now. So before we do anything else, I'm just going to give this a bit of Deoxit 100. So most of it's diluted, but this is the 100% solution. And I'm going to wipe this directly onto the track. And that should do that for a long, long time. Now it's time for the most important part of this whole exercise. Now it's time for the second most part of this whole exercise. Let's see if this works. Now we should start to see this impedance going up slowly. Started off at 0 and what we're going to call 0. I'm winding up slowly, and when we get to, let's say around 400k, that'd be cool if it cut off around there. 66. When it goes to the next range, it sort of vanishes for a second. Well, we've got to be getting close now. That's it. So we get 324, 340, 360, 360. 360. It's pretty good. I'm happy with that. 360 is around about 7. So I'll probably cut off a little bit too much of the carbon. Doesn't matter. You're never going to set it to 9, or you could get to 8. I could have been a little bit more precise on the cutting, but that's, as I said, it'll be 30 years' time when I'm next using that pot. And right now I'm happy with 7. And what's even making me happier, when I go further, it's open circuit, which means it is no longer in my tone sucking circuit. So now that is open. So I'm going to get the full chime out of that neck pickup, as many highs as I can. I reckon it's going to be great. So now I'm going to put these into the guitar. Right, I'm just finishing off the reassembly of this. Still got the other tone pot to put in here. But this came with the Bumblebee capacitor. Put away with the original case now, so I'm not going to pull it down to show you, just feel too shit to do that. But it's a fairly long black capacitor with resistive type of colour bands on it. And they were made by Sprague back in the day, 58 to 60 or something like that. And they were good paper and oil capacitors. But Gibson don't use them anymore. They have this look-alike capacitor to a Bumblebee, but I understand, and I might be wrong, that Gibson are no longer allowed to use paper and oil for mass production because of OH&S, safety issues for their workers. So this new look-alike, I understand, not confirmed, that it's actually Mylar. And I was pretty keen to use paper and oil. So these vitamin Qs, not sure who makes those. Can I see that? Don't know who it is. Maybe Del Ritmo. Don't know. But they're genuine paper and oil caps. I've used these before. Really happy with them. They sound sweet compared to something like an orange drop, which always just sounds a little bit hard to me, a little bit harsh. Now here is my treble bleed, treble bypass resistor capacitor network. I think just putting a capacitor across it is just a bit too much of a hammer job. Several years ago, I came up with this little box and I found it really handy. So I use it for calculating the treble bypass cap. And I've got a whole range of capacitors here, which I can put in parallel or series. And the parallel or series is for when I use a resistor in parallel or series, or if I do want to just test it with only a capacitor, then I switch it to this mode, cap only. Also the tone cap, nearly everybody just defaults to 0.022 for Gibson and 0.047 for Fender, or humbucker single coil. But I wanted to have a few options, so I went a couple of steps either way for the tone capacitor. In this case, I've opted for the stock standard 0.02 version, but in my other guitars you'll find different values to the stock value. Sometimes I found the best sounding pickup is actually the factory one, because the factory got it right so often. Anyway, enough yickety-yak. I also ran better grounding, so where's that? Oh, here we go. So I got better grounding going directly to the output jack, making sure that all of the covers of all of the pots are all properly grounded. Anything you can do to stop the buzz. You'll see that the input cavity is not shielded. Tempted to, and if buzz becomes an issue, then I will shield it. I won't paint the shielding paint on, because that's, once you paint it on, it's done. I'd rather use double-sided copper tape, basically. I stick it in there, so everything's got to come out, so you can do a good job covering it. And then on the inside of the lid, the cover, also make sure that that's properly shielded. Then critically important that cover shield connects to this shield, which would go in there, or else all you've done is created an antenna. So, but if everything is grounded and you've encased those controls, you basically have what's called a Faraday shield, which is a box which putting to earth any noise that's coming through the air. All right, I just want to finish this off now. I'm keen to hear if it makes any difference at all and worth all this effort. This is the finished control cavity. They're the two new high precision pots. Definitely worth the extra money. They are both higher resistance compared to both of the originals. The higher the impedance, the more highs it will allow through. And because these are tone pots, it'll also be less loading on the actual sound coming from the volume pot. The new Vitamin Q tone caps. These are genuine, I was going to say olive oil in paper. The original Bumblebees had had like a little ball there, a ball of solder or something at the end, which these don't have. So I'm pretty sure these are just Mylar. Nothing wrong with them. They work fine, but I wanted paper and oil to get closer to that genuine sound that Eric would have had. Oops, there's my real motivation. Uh-oh, I've been outed. Yeah, so that is now much better. I'm now getting the tone roll-off starting to happen at around 8 instead of happening at 3. So my ideal setting, I don't know, I've had a bit of a preview, and I'm really liking that tone control at around about 5, which would have been pretty hard to achieve with the original pot in there. It would have been 2.25 or something ridiculous. This is my treble bleed network. which works excellently. And I think that's it. So I'm going to put this back together, and I'll give you a quick demo. I'm not going to set up, mics and preamps and things like that. It'll just be whatever comes through the camera, which I know is not going to be great, but it's my guitar and I can't justify spending any more time on it. I've got to get on to real customers. With the previous pot in there, I'd have to turn this down to about 4 before I started to just hear it rolling off. I'm expecting to hear it a bit earlier now. Let's have a listen. There. So I'm just starting to hear the tone control taking effect, and that's on 7.5 to 8. Much better. That's where I'd expect it. So let's see where I would probably use it. Let's go by ear again. That's where I'd use it, and that's currently on 4.5. I like that. All right, that was a success. We like that. Let's see, does the treble bleed work? Hear that we're not losing that top end all the way down to off. Beautiful, treble bleed worked great. Now this one was with the neck pickup, it was more about giving this a chance to be as open a sound as possible. So let's hope. Yeah, already you can hear it. That's the neck pickup. No muted sound at all. Beautiful. I think they were several very worthwhile exercises. Whew, what kinds? Oh, of course, the sound that made me chase this dragon the whole time. Welcome to the family, Eric. I love you. I love you. Don't ever leave me. Sorry about this silly video. Next video, we'll be back to more amp repairs. Although we will do a comparison of the pickups, Duncan Antiquities, Sliders Paffs, and Fralin Paff and Unbucker. That'll be a very interesting sound comparison. I love them all. See you soon.